Welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by the Field at 68. I'm Christian Sykes, joined by Charles Branch. We have a special guest today, Alabama Athletics Director Greg Byrne. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us about Alabama athletics and Alabama basketball. So I would be getting a lot of flack if I didn't ask. Just give us your 30-second elevator pitch on the basketball arena. Everyone wants to know, and I know you've been asked probably 10,000 times about it, but just a quick, I guess, update or elevator pitch on that.
Yeah, so it continues to be a priority for us. Coach Oates, Coach Curry, Ashley, Priest Johnson with our gymnastics team, we do talk about it on a regular basis. And we actually have a couple things up our sleeve right now from some short-term steps I think we're going to be looking at that I've talked with them about, and the response has been very positive. That doesn't mean we're going to go put a shovel on the ground on a new arena, but things to improve our program that the coaches feel really good about. We got some discussions to take place with Dr. Bell and the university, as well as our board of trustees, that we continue to have very good conversations and positive interactions with them. And so the reality, and I've been a little more direct about it lately, we have continued to raise money. Our donors have really been generous. Our fundraising staff, the Crimson Tide Foundation, have done a really good job. I've been involved directly in the fundraising as well. And we have made significant progress on this. We've raised a lot of money for it, which is good. Are we at the point where we have a financial model that doesn't jeopardize the financial health of our entire department? No, we don't. And I think that's probably the part that people haven't always thought of big picture wise, is making sure that we're not doing anything to jeopardize what we do with our football program, with our entire department, all 21 of our sports, and what it takes to operate that on an annual basis. And so we're continuing to work at it. We will continue to work at it. I think we have some opportunities that we'll be hopefully going public with in a few months about what could be some positive first steps. And, I know there's been some discussion from some other ADs about NIL and the impact that's having on infrastructure. We're not immune to that as well. NIL is a reality right now. And so we're trying to make sure that we are supporting our student athletes across the board. NIL is part of that. And the reality is that, we want to have guardrails in place so we can have long-term broad-based programming across the board, support our student athletes like we do, as generously as we do. And we're proud of that. And, but at the same time too, how that all, comes in with the arena, it's a balancing act, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm a finance person in my day job, so I definitely understand the value of ensuring that you're not investing in something that's going to make you financially struggle in building the arena, especially with the price tag of probably close to $300 million right now. If it's not financially responsible, then you don't want to risk the health of the athletic department. So definitely understand that. Now that we got that out of the way, let's turn to some more pressing matters. I know you probably can't talk on this specifically, but Front Office Sports released something about a tournament next year that Alabama could or could not be involved in. Again, not specifically talking about that, but talking about that type of NIL model where you have teams coming in and certain companies or whatever like investment firms are coming in and paying teams as far as like an NIL model. What are your thoughts on overall as far as like the health or the sanctity of, I guess, NCAA athletics?
Yeah. So as far as I saw the news about the tournament, I think it may have been Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, about having a tournament tied to NIL for men's basketball. I do think everything is evolving. I'm, from my knowledge, which I'm not saying I have all the information on that exact event, I think they may have had the cart ahead of the horse just a little bit, to where I'm not sure if it's as far along as what was described. But in reality, you know, are there going to be events tied to NIL in the future? I certainly could see that, but is it imminent right now with anything that we have signed and ready to go? No. And so I realize, you know, at the end of the day right now, what you have to do is you have to adapt, you have to evolve. We're doing our very best to have that be the case at the University of Alabama. You know, I think from an NIL standpoint, there's a lot of great opportunities that young men and women have been able to capitalize on because of that. There's also a lot of, you know, one of the biggest challenges, and I've said this, is separating fact and fiction. Because there's not much public disclosure about NIL opportunities. Agents especially have tried to populate the narrative out there with a lot of narratives that maybe aren't 100% accurate. And so trying to separate between the two is very challenging. And that's where, you know, I really do truly hope that we can find some guardrails that people will know what we're working with, that we can continue to have good opportunities for the young men and young women in our program, and good legitimate marketing opportunities. And then at the same time too, have the resources available to make sure that we have broad-based programming. I got the picture right behind me, represents all 21 of our teams, 650 of our student athletes, and every one of those kids in every one of those sports works their tail off to represent the University of Alabama. And a college athletic department is not a perfect place because that doesn't exist anywhere, but there is a lot of good that takes place here that I am concerned about some of the unintended consequences as the pressures on the market continue to be there on a daily basis.
And perfect segue. You're going to DC, obviously, I think, to talk to Congress, if I'm not mistaken, with kind of like a fireside chat or something, along with Coach Saban. What exactly does that entail, and what are you trying to accomplish in DC?
Yeah, so Coach Saban and I are going to be up there tomorrow. He got invited by Senator Cruz and some other folks up there in DC. There'll be I think there's going to be about 7 or 8 of us that are up there. Some student athletes, some people from the collective side, and we're going to have a roundtable with Senator Cruz and some of his staff as they're working on NIL legislation. And so it'll give Coach Saban and I an opportunity to just talk from our lens on the positives of what's going on, but also the challenges and how we can hopefully create something. You know, anything that has any staying power has guardrails, has just a working body to understand, hey, okay, this is what you can, this is what you can't do, so we can make sure we can have long-term stability in whatever that is. And so, you know, there's some type of regulation to almost anything, right? And so it's going to give us an opportunity to describe the importance of why we need to have legislation so we can continue to have college athletics at the level and the support that we do. You know, one of the things that's out there a lot that I hear is that it's unpaid labor, right? And that's a narrative that's been put out there a lot on the plaintiff side. And in reality, what we spend on a full ride student athlete at the University of Alabama, on average, is about $190,000 a year. And that's not counting a dollar in salaries. And I think that's a number that's very real. The other part is, if you are on a full ride scholarship, you live off campus, and you have all the different opportunities from full cost of attendance to Pell to Alston, plus your scholarship stipend, you're close to $42,000 a year cash in pocket. All right, so that's about the equivalent of a $60,000 a year job. So those are real dollars that are being shared with our student athletes on a regular basis across the board for everybody that's on a full ride. And then if you're on a partial scholarship, you're going to get a percentage of that. And so I do think it's important to talk about those numbers, because sometimes when I bring those up to different groups and organizations, they're pretty blown away when I tell them that, because there was I was with a former student athlete this past weekend in Greenville, South Carolina, at the SEC women's tournament. And I was telling her about the money that a full ride young man or young woman receives now, and she was blown away by that. So it's something that I think it's good to talk about and be upfront and understand that there is a tremendous amount of resources that we're investing in the young people in our program on an annual basis. And
And
so we're going to get to talk about that a little bit more up in DC.
I apologize. Last question I have about NIL for you is from Joey, who's our other host who obviously couldn't be here. You get asked a lot about obviously NIL, transfer portal, and for coaches, obviously we know how difficult that type of transition is. Nick Saban spoke about it in an article last week about how like the struggles of coming back from a national champ or semifinal and then automatically having to switch into that type of like coaching mode of like, okay, how much playing time am I going to get? How much money am I going to get, et cetera. How has your job specifically evolved over time in relation to the type of NIL landscape, transfer portal landscape that that has happened now? And has there been any additional responsibilities or stresses that you find yourself dealing with on a daily basis?
Yeah, the job's very different than what it was even 4 or 5 years ago. And obviously, one of Coach Saban's many strengths was his ability to evolve. And he continued to until his very last day as our head football coach, right? And so what I've just tried to do is understand that day to day, I've never had any interest in politics. And the people that serve in those roles is very important for our country. But I'm obviously heading to DC tomorrow. Didn't think I would be doing that on a regular basis. It's my second trip in the last year up there, in the last 12 months. And so obviously we deal with our legal counsel on a regular basis because of all the litigation that's taking place. And at the end of the day, it's necessary. It's a reality. So I have to deal with it. That's not going to do me a whole lot of good to complain about it. So, for coaches, for ADs, our worlds have changed and nobody did a better job of evolving than Coach Saban with it. And I use him as an inspiration through that too, to make sure that I'm keeping my mind open and realizing that I got to continue to evolve with it for the best thing for our student athletes, best thing for the University of Alabama and our program.
You mentioned being in Greenville last week for the SEC Women's Tournament. First time to have a double bye in the tournament since 1998. When I was in school down there in the late 2000s, except for Tierney Jenkins, we had players that struggled to make layups consistently in a layup line. Wendell Hudson brought life back into the program, but Christy Curry's taken it to another level, poised to make the third NCAA tournament appearance in the past 4 years. We talk a lot about men's basketball, but can you talk a little bit about the job she's done in just the women's program and why people need to be watching them and get excited about them as they head into March?
Yeah, Coach Curry has really done an excellent job over her time here. And, I think sometimes people understandably say, oh, you need to get things turned around quickly in whatever sport it is. And every once in a while you do see that, right? It's not out of the question. At the same time, too, one of the things for me, for being around this literally my entire life with college sports, is stability within your coaching ranks is really good. So if you have the right person that you feel is going to coach and develop and care about the young people in his or her program, you're going to show a lot of patience with them. And I know Coach Curry, it really has done a great job over a period of time of getting us back. I mean, to have a double bye, that's a heck of a deal, right? And obviously we didn't play very well against Tennessee and they played really well against us, but we know that we're going to get selected for the NCAA tournament this coming Sunday. And that's a tribute to her and the job that she and her staff and the team have done to make it there 3 times in 4 years. And we want to continue to see progress with that, but really pleased with that. We've seen good increases in the crowd size, and our students have gotten more into it as well. So we want to see that continue for the future, but proud of the job that she's doing.
So when it comes to coaching legends, you obviously have one right down the hallway in Coach Saban, and he got a lot of the headlines, but you've got a collection of phenomenal coaches at Alabama. When we just talked about Coach Curry, we're obviously very familiar with Coach Oates from the basketball side. Thought the Rob Vaughn hire for baseball was fantastic. We know what Patrick Murphy can do. J.C. Wells putting guys in the PGA tournament. Wes Hart and what he did with the women's soccer program last year and continuing to grow there. You know, you referenced the poster built by Bama, and I'm sure all of them would talk about it's built by the players, but I'm sure they've got incredible leadership insights as well. So when can we get Aaron Suttle's work on a leadership book from all those coaches, each getting a chapter to share with the Alabama community?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I tell you, you know, obviously people like Coach Curry, Coach Murphy, Dan Waters, our track coach, who's done a phenomenal job. Who am I? George Husak with our men's team. He has them ranked for the first time in a long time. Uniton with our women's tennis program, they're playing at a high level. Mick Potter's won a national championship with women's golf. We've got a lot of really good people leading the young men and young women in our program. And one of the things, you know, when we go hire coaches, obviously we're very aggressive from a football standpoint because of the impact that has on everything else. But really most of our coaches, we've hired either as assistants from another program, or we've hired as a head coach at a, you know, maybe a group of 5 or level. Because one of the things I've always tried to do with coaches is find coaches who I think are their trajectories on their way up. And people want to be at Alabama. We haven't necessarily just come in and wrote a check to hire somebody. We tried to be very smart and efficient with our resources, because as much as people think there is unlimited resources, there's not. And we've tried to find people that we think are, you know, either rock stars at their level or have the ability to become one in time. And, you know, I think I'm really proud of across the board, the successes we're having. And then what we do is they have success, we reward them. Wes Hart's a great example of that. I didn't hire Wes Hart. He was here when we got here, but you spend 5 minutes with Coach Hart and you're like, man, that's somebody I'd want my daughter to play for. That is, you know, just the culture within his program is really good. And you see that with the successes we're starting to have there. And getting the Final Four, the College Cup the year before was really good. And I think our class, our freshmen this year that he brought in after that are going to give us a good bright future there. And you're seeing that across the board with so many of our sports. So we got great leaders of our young men and young women. We've got incredible student athletes, but you know, I look back at from a foundational standpoint, what the University of Alabama represents, people are going to want to be a part of that. And we try to take advantage of that when we're hiring our coaches that we bring in.
I don't want to forget Sarah Patterson too. I know she's not coaching, but she's obviously very involved in Alabama athletics. Maybe give her 2 chapters, one on leadership and one on marketing, because she does a great job telling about the marketing story to get gymnastics where it is. She does.
Sarah's awesome, and David, her husband, and you know, when we brought Ashley in to be our head coach, Sarah gave me great counsel during that time, and excited the job that Ashley's doing too. So Sarah was absolutely one of the foundational rocks of women's athletics here at the University of Alabama, and she's still just a joy to have around and be around on a regular basis.
So switching gears back to Alabama basketball, I guess this would be women's basketball as well. Obviously next year you have Oklahoma and Texas coming in. With that, there's 2 additional teams. There's going to be schedule changes. We've already seen it with football, with how they're doing the 8
or the 9 games, and then get rid of the divisions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you know anything, or can you speak on anything with regards to whether or not it would be 18 or 20 teams? And then addition to that, like set opponents, or do you know anything of that type of knowledge with regards to next year for scheduling?
Yeah, as of right now, I think we're sticking with 18. I don't know if we're going to have any more discussion on that leading up to Destin in the spring. You know, one of the things for a while, Coach Saban and I talked about going to 9 games, right, from a football standpoint. And when we weren't doing that as a conference, we started scheduling all these home and homes in football. We go to Wisconsin this year. Next year they come back here, and then I think in 25, if I'm not mistaken, we also have West Virginia, if I remember off the top of my head. those games are good for college football. It continues to spread the brand of the University of Alabama when we go up to Wisconsin next year, right? And I'm guessing there'll be a few people in Alabama that say, hey, let's go up and play Whistling Straits and get out of the heat and go up and catch a game at Camp Randall, which will be cool. I've never been to a game there. I'm looking forward to that. Same could be said for men's basketball. When we do, it's neutral, but at Phoenix and Birmingham with Arizona, that's good for college basketball. That's good for our fan base at our school, and then the fan base of Arizona as well. So what I would say to you, and I'm on the men's basketball committee, I'll go from DC on Tuesday, and I'll end up in Indianapolis tomorrow night as we start the selection process. So I won't be in Nashville, but I'll be following from the NCAA basketball committee room. It's good non-conference basketball games in November and December are not only good to help you prepare for March, as you see how Nate has approached it from a non-conference scheduling, but it's also good for the game of college basketball, both on the men's and women's side, to have good matchups, especially some midweek games, so it doesn't get swallowed up by college football or the NFL, but has the opportunities to create excitement and interest. That's good for your team. It's good for your season ticket base and your fan base, and it's good for the game itself. So, what I would say is I'm okay with staying with 18. I'm only one vote, right? But I'm okay with staying with 18. But I think there is a responsibility to create good matchups that the fans and the teams are going to be interested in.
This is going to be off the cuff because you just sparked a memory, realizing that you were part of the NCAA bracket committee. Can you make sure that we're not in Spokane, Washington? That would be.
Yeah, I tell you, it's kind of like last year when we were the #1 overall seed, and I can't be any more serious about this than that. When Alabama is discussed, I have to leave the room. I cannot add a commentary. I cannot smile and tell the committee how much I love them and how great, how smart they are. You can't do it. The integrity of that is extremely important. So, however, when it comes to where you get sent during the bracketing, after you put the bracket together and then you get sent to your different locations, there is a bunch of I guess rules and regulations as far as that goes, and so really, a lot of it's done from a computer. Because it knows all the guidelines of what you can and can't do. And so where we end up, other than when you're one of the top seeds and you can say, I want to be in Birmingham, right? Like I did last year, or we did last year. You really don't have any say in it beyond that. Now, because last year when I was sitting in the room and I was like, hey, we're going to Birmingham. This is great. And then as we're going through the bracketing and everything, Auburn shows up in Birmingham. I'm like, what the heck? I couldn't do anything about it. I had no control over it, but I was like, man, the people in the secondary market from a ticketing standpoint were thrilled with it, I'm sure. But you can see how much influence I have where you get sent, because Auburn got sent to Birmingham last year, and no offense to our friends down in the plains, but that probably wouldn't have been my first choice. And so you can see I don't have any say in that.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad reactions with regards to that. But last thing I want to say, and I feel like it's necessary. How can fans get involved? You mentioned Crimson Tide Foundation. You mentioned Alabama. What like, as a athletic department, what are you looking for fans to? Obviously, we have the passion and we attend games, but is there anything additionally that fans can do to get involved with the athletic department?
Yeah, obviously being there in person is a big thing. Showing your love of the university across the board, wherever you are, wherever you live, hang the flag outside of your apartment, wear the t-shirts, all those different things. But in reality, it takes money to operate this. We expect to compete at the highest levels. And so because of that, we need to make sure our budget is there. So whether it is supporting the Crimson Tide Foundation, Alabama, they've done a really nice job with that, getting that off the ground. They don't obviously report to me. It's an outside organization. But Trip Powell, Aaron Suttles, Jay McPhillips, if you go to yealabama.com, and if you can join at $18 a month, that helps. Every single person that does that helps tremendously in our ability to make sure we're competitive from an NIL standpoint. as we navigate the waters to try to get to a new long-term model for college sports and what that looks like. We need to make sure we have a legally defensible model that can work. But we really want to make sure we have broad-based programming across the board and give a bunch of young men and young women the opportunity to come compete for the University of Alabama. So right now, from a EA Alabama standpoint, that is really, really important for us.
Yeah, and I think that's all we have, Greg. And we really appreciate, again, you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us about Alabama athletics and men's basketball. But we appreciate you.
You bet. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for bringing attention to our program. We're excited about obviously what Nate's doing. He's always remember, I had never met Nate. Jeff Puritan, who's now the AD at Arkansas State, which they had a big win yesterday. They're playing for the Sun Belt Championship, I think today. He and I flew up to Buffalo, and Nate picked us up at the airport and took us to his house, and we had dinner with his family that night. And he was saying what a nice day it was, and I was like, "This is miserable. I can't even believe you live up here in this environment." No offense to anybody that lives in Buffalo, but I said, "I think you'll like the weather down in Alabama a little bit better," and just thrilled with the job that he's done, and also great progress with our women's basketball program too. So, one of my favorite sayings is, if you're going to keep score, you might as well try to win. We expect to win here at Alabama, but we also want to represent the university in the manner that it deserves to be represented in too. So appreciate everybody's support, and roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.